So on to our movie, our masterpiece theater movie today.
The Revenge of Dr. X, also known as Venus Flytrap, also known as Body of Prey, and
Yep.
in Japan, known as The Devil's Garden.
Yep.
Dun,
Yep.
dun,
This is a
dun.
bizarro movie, man. This
This
movie
is,
has an Ed Wood connection.
yeah, yeah, not, it's, when you first, it does, definitely. It has that weird,
Well, you know what it is.
the open.
You know what it is. It's funny. Um, Back in the day, I put the sound up. Can you talk? Can you?
I can hear you fine.
You can hear me? Okay. Okay. Years ago, this movie came out on video, right?
Yeah,
VHS. Now it was called Revenge of Doctor X, but the credits were for the movie Mad Doctor Blood Island, which was with John Ashley and one of those Filipino horror movies.
right,
When you play the movie, that's not the movie. It's a completely different movie, and you're like, "What is
right.
this?" It's a Japanese movie made with Americans, and of course, some Japanese. And you're like, "What the heck is this?" And like, I really never watched it till today, and because I got bored with it. Most of the times I tried, obviously,
Mhm.
but I'm watching it today, and I'm reading about it. And here's what was weird about it. And my friend of mine actually picked up on this before I think the magazines did. Watch it, you watch the movie. He watched it. He rented it thinking it was Mad Dr. Blood Island. And when he watched it with his friends and it was this movie, he said he was like transfixed by this weirdness. Because, of course, he's a big Japan guy and blah, blah,
Yeah,
blah. So there's a book that came out like in the 90s, maybe in the late 80s, called Agony of Ecstasy, and there's a book on Ed Wood. And in the back of the book, it talks about screenplays that he wrote, and one of them was the Venus Flytrap Man. And when my friend saw that, he went, "Wait a minute, that's got to be that Body of the Prey, Revenge of Doctor X movie." And it's been as the years went on, it's been pretty much. I've never seen the screenplay, and apparently it was changed by the director. But I think that's where the connection between the Ed Wood and the movie is because it was an unfilmed 1950s screenplay by Ed Wood. It would be nice if somebody would publish it, but they never did. So this is like something that he came up with back in the 50s that never got, and it would be interesting to see if he really, if like it was really supposed to be set in Japan or not. You know what I mean? I don't know why he would have, but this movie was made in Japan by Americans. I think military wanted to do something, and they've got James Craig, who was a American actor, kind of like B list maybe. I don't know.
yeah.
And they brought him over from the United States to be the whatchamacallit, the lead in the movie, and it's like okay. So I've always wondered if this movie was in supposedly because it's a very strange movie. The well, obviously we know it's a very strange movie because we just watched it or whatever. But it's kind of like Frankenstein.
Yeah, I'm watching that and I'm going, what is this? I mean, they really ripped off Frankenstein in parts of the movie, especially in
Big
the last
time.
scene with the lightning and
The Hunchback assistant.
the,
The
the supposed, well, it's not a castle, but it's a resort, but it's near a volcano that has a
near
lot of
volcano.
rocks.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I don't know how much this was in Ed Wood's screenplay, but it might have been. I have no idea. But it's just a strange movie, and I think it's the only ever. It was found in a, from what I read, it was found in a film lab with no titles, no nothing. And this company called Regal Video got a hold of it, and they just put fake titles on it and released it to video back then. Because in the early '80s, VHS was such a big deal, and there were so many stores popping up that they were just desperate to look
uh,
for product. Kind of like now with the
Streaming.
internet.
Yeah, all those
So they were
streaming
just
channels. Yeah.
streaming channels. Yeah, they just want I mean, you'd be surprised when you watch Tubi or whatever how many bootlegs they got on there. Believe it or not, you see a movie, you go, "Oh wow, they got a copy of this," and you watch it, and it's like some YouTube, digitized thing, but they're
Mm.
like they just want product, and I don't know who's feeding it to them, but apparently some people are like acting like they own this thing, and Tubi's like, okay, I'd like to find some crap movie and tell Tubi, hey, I own this, give me
Yeah,
some money, but I don't know how that works, but anyway, so back to our movie. Let's just call it Revenge of Dr. X. That's the title that
that's the title that we
That's the
have.
title that originally was released as on video back in the early '80s. So this is a Mad Doctor movie. I anyway, I don't understand how he goes from a NASA guy, why he's supposed to go on vacation to Japan. I guess the
Well,
doctor said he has a house there and his daughter, right? Was
yeah,
living in Japan or
he's
something.
he's a workaholic rocket scientist, and he's under a lot of stress, and he's yelling at everybody and freaking out and drinking and smoking. And it starts out like he's freaking out because there's a storm supposedly coming, and he's going to do a rocket launch. And the
And he's
storm,
yelling all the time. He's like,
yeah, storm's gonna interfere, but then it passes, and he's able to go up. And then two other scientists, after the rocket's launched, two other scientists come in and say, "Hey, we think there's an error in some of the calculations," and he freaks out even more, and to the point where he sort of like passes out. And then they sit him down, and his assistant is telling him, "Hey, you need a vacation. You're
his
going."
Japanese assistant.
Yeah, the Japanese assistant. You're kind of flipping out and getting weird here. You need a vacation, And he's then Dr. Bragan, yeah, Bragan was like,
Hmm.
when I was first in school, I studied plants and botany, and I wanted to do a paper on the connection of sequoia and some other tree in Japan. And well, he's going on, and he says, well, the Japanese assistant says, I have my family own a bunch of resorts in Japan. Why don't you go there? Or have you meet my cousin? She'll take you around, and you can take some time off. You won't be needed back until the rocket gets to. They're sending a rocket to another planet. They don't tell you what.
Yeah, this guy's like the original Elon Musk or something,
Yeah. So,
except
so,
angry.
so he goes, all right, I'll go. So then he's driving to.
He decides to drive to the airport in North Carolina, right? He decides he wants to
Yeah,
take a ride.
I don't know how he went from Florida to North Carolina. I assume he's going to fly out of there.
Yeah,
So,
that was it. He was going to fly out of the Carolinas or
and the way
something.
his car develops trouble, so he stops by this really seedy garage, and this guy there covered in dirt and oil and stuff.
And
He caught
snakes.
two snakes, and he says, "Oh, my car's screwed up and won't drive. Can you fix it?" He goes, "Oh, I'll look at it. In the meantime, why don't you like visit my snake exhibit for free and stuff?" So he's walking around. Reagan's walking around looking at all the snakes, and he sees a Venus flytrap, and he tries to buy it off the guy, and the guy goes, "Oh, that's too little to sell. You can get bigger ones out in the swamps."
But
So
watch out
then,
for the snakes.
yeah, watch out for the snakes. So he goes out. He's got a box with him, and he finds a Venus flytrap. He's like takes a shovel, and a snake was near it, so he scoots the snake away, and then he digs up the flytrap and puts it in a box. And then you see him traveling. He gets out at the airport. He's got the box
He's
with
got
the
the box
flag.
on the plane, and he's like
Yeah,
opening it up.
he sticks his finger in it, it bites him. He's like, ooh. So then he gets to Japanese customs, and they let him through with the fly trap, which I don't think the real customs would do.
Because apparently there's no Venus flytraps in
No,
Japan. This is the first one
well, there
ever.
are now.
There are now. They walk too.
So, and anyway, he's talking, and then suddenly this customs guy kind of like pops up from the floor, and he's welcoming or saying, "Oh, you're all clear to go." So then he goes out and he meets his assistant's cousin, who's a woman, Nikimo, and she um,
He takes him to the castle.
takes him.
They
Yeah, she
they're
takes him.
driving around Japan, and they're
Yeah, and she's showing him the sights and saying, "Well, first let's have tea." So they're sitting in a tea restaurant, I guess. It's a real, like, very formal Japanese one. And he starts telling her about how he's there to study plants, and he he believes it is a Venus flytrap plant, and then there's an ocean version, Venus something or other, and they both go out and seek prey. And he believes because they can think and reason,
that's where
that
humans came from.
yeah, that's where humans evolved from, sea plants. So he wants a place where he can do his experiments. It's very remote. She goes, "Oh, we have a place like that. It's real remote." So
There's even a volcano nearby. Look,
yeah,
it's erupting.
so there's this great. They're going on this really junky road. It's real crazy driving. It's got goofy music behind it, and he's saying, "Boy, I can see, I can see why you're whoever decided not to put a real resort here." And then there's a rock slide that happens, and they have to, like, step on the brakes and avoid the rocks. And then as they drive past it, a volcano erupts. It goes, "Oh yeah, it's also near a volcano." Well, that's probably another reason why he didn't put a resort up here. Like,
Yeah.
so they get to the resort, and he says, "Oh, this is perfect." And it's run down, and it looked like it's been abandoned. She says, "Oh, there's some of the rooms have furnishings in them, so we should be okay." And as they're walking in, some tiles fall from the roof, and it turns out there's a hunchback handyman who stays and takes care of the grounds.
Yeah, because this place is deserted and it looks kind of grungy from the inside.
Okay. So then she shows him and the hunchback has dogs. One's a really vicious, mean dog. The other one is another dog who's nice and has puppies. So then he begins his. She takes him, shows him the greenhouse, and he's like, "Oh, this is perfect." So then he begins his experiments, and you see him, and she's helping him, and you see they're looking at things and they're writing in notebooks, and it's all like just
He's
busy things.
showing her how the Venus flytrap works,
Yeah.
like
And then so, like, he takes a thing out of his pocket and puts an ant on the fly trap, and then the fly trap doesn't close. He says, "Oh, the Venus flytrap figured out that the ant is too small for any nutritional value. That's why it didn't close. But when you put a bigger bug in, it'll snap shut." So these plants can think and reason. Okay.
that's why his connection to human.
So he's busy, um, giving it injections of various vitamins and nutrients, and the volcanic soil around the resort helps the Venus flytrap to grow. So it grows from, like, a small. Venus flytraps are really small. They're not very big, but this thing goes from, like, maybe 6 inches to like four
Yeah,
feet.
and that's the other movie that this one is kind of inspired by, the Little Shop of
Yeah,
Horrors with
little.
the
Yeah,
giant
yeah.
plant.
So so he's doing expenses. Now I need that Venus
Yeah,
faucet.
that that's Venus. It's in the sea. That
Yeah.
plant from the sea or whatever it is.
So they go to Tokyo, I guess, or someplace, and then they go to the beach and they go skiing.
And they get four topless Japanese girls to skin
Yeah,
dive with
I
them.
think they're either. I think they may be pearl divers or something. So yeah, they come running over, and then they help him find where the plant is. So he goes down in his scuba gear, and he's cutting away. And it cuts it free from its
And
whole.
it's a big plant.
Yeah, it's taller than him. It's about like 8 foot long,
Yeah,
tall.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But then he puts it in this clear coffin that's been sitting in the sun with no water, so it's probably dried out by the time it gets back. So they drive back to the hotel, and there's a scene before that where he's talking to her, and he's like, "Well, maybe when my experiments are over, so I'll be able to pay attention to other things, and she's all girly and gooey eyed at him and stuff. So you think there's a budding romance happening.
Yeah.
So anyway, he takes the plant back, and then you see him, doing stuff, and he's taking things out of the plant in the glass, the marine plant, and sewing it on to the regular,
Venus.
the giant
Yeah.
Venus flytrap, and all this sort of stuff. And he said, something. It's like, grow. Uh, uh, your your mother is the earth, and your father is lightning. And so,
That's from one of the Frankenstein movies. That's either
yeah,
from Ghost of Frankenstein or one of those. Then you see the crack of lightning too.
and
And
as
then
he,
those the he's got those like rods that have light that
yeah,
light up. That's
those,
straight out of
yeah, well, straight out of Frankenstein. So he builds this thing, and it's laying on this like Frankenstein. It's laying on this like vertical
and
table.
it pushes it up to him and the hunchback. They push it
Right.
up to the.
Well, there's an important thing they missed. They didn't really explain, but apparently, as he's working, he cuts himself on the marine plant. And then, let me fix that. He goes, no, there's no time and stuff. And then after that, he starts wearing this leather glove on his
Yeah, right.
So he, he does the whole Frankenstein thing. Like you said, it's straight out of the Frankenstein movie, except he didn't say it's alive. So he brings it up, and the lightning's hitting and flashing, and the machines are doing their electrical things and whatever. So then,
In the original Frankenstein movie, they cut out a scene. They cut out a line
did they?
where like Clive goes, "Now I know how it feels like to be God." They put it back in, but they actually cut it out.
Oh, I think that, yeah, I remember reading that. They cut it out because
It's offensive.
it was offensive. Yeah.
It's back in there though. I've seen.
Yeah.
I think I've seen a version or an outtake where he says it. But yeah.
Okay. So,
So yeah, then the monster, comes to life. It kind of comes back to life, but it's weak. You know.
yeah, and there's one scene where it's like it has this like vegetable head and weird
Yeah.
stalks growing out of its top. Got a human body and like flower petals around its neck.
That monster costume was made by one of those guys that did those Ultraman
Yeah,
shows or whatever, because it
yeah,
looks just like an
it looks
Ultraman
just like him.
monster.
And in fact, there's a couple of scenes where it kind of does those Ultraman poses,
Yeah, yeah,
moving
yeah,
around. And
yeah,
its hands, its arms, it has arms, and its hands are Venus flytrap, and so are its feet.
yeah.
And it has a long tentacle for a tail. So it's not moving, and he's trying to get it to move and stuff. And
And he
he
thinks it might be
realizes,
dying because he's just sitting there.
yeah. So he just, I know you're in there. I know you can think and feel and reason. So he starts feeding all sorts of small animals to it, and it starts to get better, but it doesn't really do it. He goes, oh, you know what it needs? It needs blood from a mammal, or it needs
Yep.
human blood. So
Yeah.
then he goes to the hospital, and he's go
Mm-mm. You
this
missed a scene. There was a scene where like the hunchback feeds the monster a couple of puppies.
yeah, I thought that was weird.
Yeah, the mon the there was a scene before that where like before he goes to the hospital where the hunchback feeds him because the dogs had puppies. He
Right.
feeds him a couple of puppies, and all of a sudden the next day, hey, look,
Yeah,
he's alive. He's like
yeah,
he's all happy and perky and all
that's right. I forgot that. All right, so then he goes to the hospital, and he's
because he
feeling
wants the monster. He wants the monster to move, right?
right. He wants it to. His idea is that he built a plant version of a man,
Of a man, yeah.
prove his theory that humans evolved from marine plants.
Hmm. Yeah.
So then he goes, goes sneaks into the hospital. There's a lady receiving blood. He goes to take the blood from the IV, drops the bottle, and it cracks open. So then he's he takes a needle and he stabs it into the heart of the patient and draws blood. Although he didn't draw that much. Oh, maybe he kept doing it. I don't know. So then
Yeah.
he feeds it to
To the
um,
monster.
and he wait, then nothing happens. So then the Hunchback comes in and he's sort of poking fun at the I think he calls it the Sectosaurus.
Yeah, he's poking, making fun of the monster, just like Renfield with the
Yeah,
Frankenstein monster.
and then the Flytrap, the Sectosaurus, grabs him with his Venus flytrap hands and tries to suck on him and bite him. And so the Hunchback runs and tells Reagan and the chemo what happened. They go rush, and it's like, move, you're not moving. I know we can move and walk. We're going to stay up all night and watch this thing move. So they're in the greenhouse. They sit down on the couch and they're watching the
At some point, does it? At some point, oh, maybe it's later. Doesn't the monster also eat the other dog, the mean dog?
yeah. At some point, it eats the mean dog. It's probably before where
Yeah,
it goes out. No, he brings it outside.
that's right.
And
That's
he
right.
said, and he puts it near the dog, and he says, I know you can move, right? And he's watching it, and then
Right.
nothing happens. And then he leaves, and then the Hunchback comes in, and he's all upset. And he says something happened to the dog. So they're looking at the dog, and then they're looking at the Flytrap man, and he says, "Well, he couldn't have done it because he's too far away, and his arms won't reach." And
Yep.
then
Yep. Yep.
suddenly, the Flytrap man like pulls up one of his Flytrap hands and opens it a bit, and you see the dog's chain or collar hanging
Yeah.
from.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay,
And we
check
know
this
he
out.
says, these things can move." So they're sitting up watching the Flytrap man, and then like the chemo goes, "Oh, I'm so tired." Oh, and she falls asleep, and
And
you
then
see
he
this sort
falls
of
asleep.
mist in the air. And yeah, and then he falls asleep. you know, and then you see the Venus flytrap man's head. He's spraying out some vapor to put them to sleep. Then he gets up. The flytrap man gets up and starts walking away, and he goes into town.
He
And
sees a little kid,
yeah, he kills and eats a little. They did
just
something that
like in
I like.
Frankenstein.
Yeah, just like in Frankenstein.
But
I
Frankenstein
think
doesn't eat the kid. He throws her
no,
into the water, thinking that she's going to float like the flower or
right.
whatever.
The one thing I like about this, every time the flytrap man attacked and killed someone, you see his hands shoot out, and then the screen goes
Screen
away.
turns red. Yeah. Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
kind of effective. So then, the village is in a panic, and they're all running around, and
With their torches, they got their torches.
they have torches out and stuff. The Bragan and the chemo, they wake up and see he's gone, and they go looking for him. And they're walking around. I think he kills one or two more people. It's like a guy with a ox cart that he kills.
Yeah.
So he goes, we got to find him and stuff. And the chemo goes, look, he's up on the edge of the volcano. So Bragan goes, all right, look, I'm going to try and lure him with a goat to the edge of the volcano and kill him. And then you stay here and help the villagers get away and, keep calm and stuff. So he gets a goat and he goes up there and he's calling out to the flytrap man. And he's saying, I'm not going to kill you. We're going to go away so we can continue our experiments together and stuff. So then the flytrap man starts coming towards him, and he's holding Reagan's holding the goat. And then the chemo was watching him from down below. And suddenly you see flytrap man reach out and attack Reagan. And they're struggling, and then they fall over into the edge of the volcano into the lava. And then there's a shot where you see the goat standing at the edge of the volcano looking down and going bah. So then the movie ends with the chemo coming down from the volcano top, holding the goat, and then she stops and looks up wistfully at the edge of the volcano, and then the movie's ends.
The end. With the fake titles at the end.
Yeah, this so especially the last part, so ripped off the original Frankenstein.
Oh, big time. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm like, I wonder if I would be curious to find out which parts were originally Ed
Ed
Wood,
Wood.
which parts
Yeah.
were
Yeah.
right.
Who knows? Who knows? I'm assuming there was. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming that like probably maybe some of the dialogue might have been Ed Wood's. Maybe some of the story might have been Ed Wood's, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't set in Japan
Yeah, I
because that
can't
seemed
think
like artificial, thing to do because
no.
it was made by people by Americans in Japan, so they figured, well, we'll do it here, so
Right.
we'll just set it here and pretend like there's North Carolina scenes and Florida scenes and some generic, parts of Tokyo or Japan that look like rural areas or whatever.
Yeah.
That's what
And
I'm thinking. I don't know.
it was probably cheaper to film there too. And they were probably what was this,
They
60?
67 it was made.
Yeah. So they're probably cashing in, thinking they could cash in on the Godzilla craze that hit
Or the
America.
Ultraman movies or the
Yeah.
Monster.
Well, I don't know. I remember Ultraman in the 70s, but
I never
I
saw
didn't
that
know.
until the 80s or the 90s
Yeah.
or
So
whatever.
who knows?
I
But
mean, I've looked around there. I mean, I couldn't find that much information. I found an interview with the woman that was the lead woman. She didn't
mhm.
know that much. She just talked about making the movie a little bit. But how did they get the script? I mean, Ed Wood was alive in 1967. Was he like paid for this? Who knows?
Yeah, I know at the end he was I think he was an alcoholic.
Oh yeah,
He had a lot of problems. So
it's
uh,
funny. He still. I think he lived through 77 or 78, but around 78 or 79, they put uh they put out a book called the Golden Turkey Awards. The Michael
yeah,
Medved and his
I
brother,
remember that.
and he was direct. He was his Plan 9 and him were like the worst according, and he never lived long enough to see those accolades.
Yeah,
I mean, he died just before, so he didn't realize how much fame he was going to get after he
yeah,
passed away, which is usually the case with a lot of quote unquote artists.
yeah.
They usually don't get famous until they die, but Ed sure did, boy. But at any rate, yeah, yeah. I don't know exactly what's what, but if you put two and two together, the Venus Flytrap, man, I can't think of any other movie that. I mean, it was okay. The director I read wrote a story.
Mhm.
Now, I don't know if he wrote a story and he hired Wood to do a screenplay or what, but I think the director actually wrote it as a book or something like that. It's weird. And the title, what was it called? Something of the prey, the body of the
Body
prey.
of
Where does
the
that
Prey.
come
Yeah,
from?
yeah. I mean that's
That's a
yeah, who
weird
the
one.
hell
I have
knows?
no
That's a weird
idea.
name for it.
It's a weird movie. It's a fever dream movie. It's like, what is going on here? What? It was made for $29,000. I read. I was like, okay, well, that's some money in 1967. Not a lot, but I guess some of it was to pay James Craig to come over to Japan from the
Yeah,
U.S. But why him? Well, who's hey? We got to get James Craig. I mean, I know back then, they were bringing in Americans like
yeah.
yeah, of course, Perry Mason. What's his face? Raymond Burr came over, and Russ Tamblyn and Nick Adams, the Japanese movie. James Craig, and I was like, okay, I guess he looked like he was mature, and he looked
He
like a,
looked like a
like a
doctor,
doctor
and
who
also
becomes
a
a
lot of
mad
his movies
doctor.
were done in um, looks like late 30s and early 40s.
That's when his career was.
That's probably when his career was at its height. And
Yeah.
so he was, that's what they did a lot of time. It was like the Love Boat,
So
how they
yeah.
used to get all the old actors who were sort of past their prime.
Sometimes, yeah, yeah.
So,
Vincent
I guess,
Price and people like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
I guess keep the wolves from the door and do,
Well, and they were a name somewhat, and they probably worked cheap too.
yeah, yeah. And they probably say, hey, Craig, you want a free trip to Japan?
Yeah, some their agent goes, "Hey, somebody contacted me about a movie in Japan. You want to do it?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm not doing anything. Sure, why not?" And they go over there, and I think I read the lady said it was made in over the course of a month or two. I think they, from one interview that I read with her, I think they filmed it at a leisurely pace. So whatever. I mean, it's an oddity, all right, and it was a lost movie, or I don't know about a lost movie. It was like a movie nobody ever knew about. I don't even know if this thing ever got distributed anywhere. I see. I read there was a connection between Toei Studios in Japan, but I don't know. Maybe it played in Japan. I don't know.
Maybe it's because if you look at it, it does definitely have like a Japanese, especially from that time period, a Japanese style of acting and
Mhm.
storytelling and monster making. You
The other
know,
one that was the other one other the other one that was kind of a Japanese American kind of, or is it American or British? Was the Manster with
yeah, same thing.
that was made in Japan,
Yeah,
and I
same
think
thing.
Peter Dineley, the actor, was from a British actor, so that might have been and there was another one that was co-production, but it was made in America called Half Human. It was kind of like a ape monster or abominable
Seen
snowman
photos of
monster.
that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
see
there was one of
photos.
those too that was, but that I think that was a movie that was done in Japan and the monster was brought over here and they redid. There was a lot of cross pollination going on through these movies back then. A lot of European, Asian, you know, interesting, things going on back then.
They were trying to. Well, that I think back then, like air travel was becoming popular
hmm
and less just for wealthy people. And the world seemed to be becoming a bit more international in its attitudes.
and
And
sometimes it was probably cheaper to import a movie
yeah,
and dub
yeah,
it.
and dub it and shoot your own movie. And you also at that time had a lot of smaller
Studios,
production houses and studios making smaller movies, and drive-ins were popular, and they needed
sure.
crappy content.
They would
And,
take any content. They just
yeah,
want to have a movie every week, and Hollywood did their part. But I mean, the drive-ins were usually for the lower budget,
yeah,
movies.
movies and such.
Yeah, and the drive-ins and the downtown, theaters
Yeah,
or the 42nd Street,
yeah,
42nd
yeah,
Street
the
theaters and
cheaper
stuff like
theaters
that.
were.
They just wanted like whatever cheap product they can get for like peanuts and have like the people, okay, let's go see this. What is it? I don't know. Let's just go see it. It looks good or whatever.
And I'm sure
And for
some of this,
television too, because a lot of these
yeah,
movies were brought over, and they just played in television.
yeah, strictly for television, and depending on what package
Yes.
bought, it would depend on what cut you saw. I was trying to explain all this to my wife, and she's like, "That sounds very confusing. Please stop."
Well, okay. You had small studios like AIP. Let's just use AIP. AIP produced some movies, but
Right,
they would go over to Europe, and either they would go there to and have movies screened for them, or they would be contacted by somebody else, and they would say, "Hey, what about this movie?" And they'd watch it. Hey, that's a cool movie. Let's bring it over. We'll dub it,
right,
and that one looks like it could be theatrical. And then they'll bring it. Just show them another movie. Okay, we'll take that one, but I think that one's just good for television or whatever.
right,
So, they did their different packages. I think a lot of the ones they brought over that they liked were probably AIP were probably theatrical, but
right.
some of
Yeah,
them weren't. Some of them
yeah.
weren't.
And plus, then they would also sometimes bring a movie over, recut it or re-edit it, and then add in some extra scenes for the
Sure,
American audience. So you
sure,
would sometimes, because of this, you would sometimes end up with three or four different cuts. But also, if it was
sure,
European, depending on what country it showed in,
sure.
depended on the cut too. So like Britain and I don't know if Britain, but I know Spain had some problems with boobies and stuff.
Spain
While
had
Germany
problems.
did,
Not that Japan. Whatchamacallit. Italy and France, they were okay with the,
yeah, and Germany too. They were okay.
and Germany, yeah.
It's like
I think whatchamacallit, England was a little tougher with the violence.
yeah,
They would rate those movies X. I mean, they
yeah,
would show them, but kids couldn't get in
it's good,
until you were
right.
16.
Yeah, so yeah, it's funny how like one country, oh, it's too violent. Another country, oh, it's too many naked people. While other countries like,
Japan liked the violence and the nudity too,
yeah,
apparently.
yeah. Well, I think if you look at that coach, I think I don't know if they still do, but I think they used to bathe in like communal. or like
Sure,
soak into
sure, yeah,
cups. And I think
yeah.
they had less in certain conditions or situations. They had less issues with nudity.
But
Although,
every once in a while you get one of these, because that's why I like those Barbara Steele movies. You get some of these Italian horror movies dubbed in English, and they were a lot more intense than
yeah,
some of the
other,
American ones. You know
a
what I
lot
mean?
more gore and
They're spicier. They're more intense. Things happened in them, you know, and you're like, wow, that's pretty, you know, that's pretty crazy or whatever. So,
yeah,
but but yeah, I mean, it was easier for the smaller studios to import movies and dub them than it was to make them. AIP was starting to make those beach party movies, and that's where they
right,
were making all their money. There was probably where they're banking all their money. And then after the beach party movies died down, they started doing biker movies, and for a while they were doing those like psychedelic movies, you know, like Psych Out and whatever. And then they did the biker movies, and then they kind of moved away from horror in a lot of ways. And then they started doing action movies. But in the early '60s, they were really heavy duty on horror
yeah.
and stuff
Well,
like that.
that's what we're selling. You know,
Yeah,
pulling
I mean,
people into
and
the
spaghetti westerns too. All the
yeah,
spaghetti westerns too. That
yeah,
became a big deal after the Sergio Leone. They did Hunt. They brought in Hunt. Oh, and before spaghetti westerns, also AIP. And I think a lot of these only were shown on television. The Hercules movies. There was
yeah.
hundreds of those Hercules movies.
I don't remember them being in the theater, but I do remember them seeing all over
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There
television.
was. Remember there was a. I remember as a kid watching, and there's a couple of examples on YouTube. It was actually packaged as a show called Sons of Hercules, and it had a
Yeah,
theme
I
song,
think
which
I
like
kind of remember
it was
that.
a guitar oriented. So it was like the Mighty Sons of Hercules, something like that. And it would be like a TV show, and it would be in two parts. You'd get part one, and then next week, and it was just basically an Italian movie they just chopped in half, and I guess they redubbed it, or else
Yeah, I remember that.
I used to be on. It used to be
And,
on in the afternoons in the '60s. With when I remember seeing it was on the afternoons that after the monster movie or the cartoons, they'd show you Hercules
yeah.
movies.
Oh, you
You
know what?
know?
I just like typed up Sons of Hercules, and it had Hercules versus the Medusa or whatever.
Yeah,
What's that plant reminded me of? Because the
that's
Medusa in
right.
that movie, it looked like
That's
a big
right.
black plant with all these things hanging off it,
That's right.
just
Yep.
one glowing eye.
Yeah, I think that Hercules versus the Medusa that actually was also released theatrically, because I remember watching that on TNT or one of those back in the '90s. So
Mhm.
but they would cut them up and they would cut them up as Sons of Hercules shows or whatever, and every one of them would be like it could have been a Hercules movie, but all the it was like oh Machiste, oh this guy, oh that guy, you know, because they were the sons of Hercules got around, you know,
Yeah,
Hercules like you know.
Batiste, there was Atlas,
Yes, yes.
there was Ursus.
It's right. That's right.
Oh God, I can't. Oh, but I remember I used to have a. They used to sell these things, 50 movies
I have one
in
of
a
those
set,
packages.
and one of them was the Hercules movies. And I remember watching some of them, and I'm like, this, these are crap.
The good ones were the ones where they fought monsters.
Right?
There was other ones where it was like just like they were. I think these Hercules movies were inspired by the Cleopatra. You know, maybe that and
Yeah,
Spartacus. Maybe that started up. And then also that Steve Reeves Hercules movies from the '50s, which I believe was Italian. You know, and it
yeah,
became like a thing for a while. And they were, you know, they had those because they were action movies. They were also kind of, you know, kind of whatever, you know what I mean? For those who like muscle men. Anyway, that'd be a good name for a book for those who like muscle men. Anyway, and I liked it. And you know, some of those movies are cool, but the ones where they fight monsters, when like you said, they got the plant monster or a giant sea creature or you know whatever, you know, you
yeah,
know what I mean. But you know, some of them were just like kind of like, okay, you
yeah.
know. But all the Bava directed Hercules and the Moon Man, and then like all of a sudden it's like as soon as you know Clint Eastwood movies hit, spaghetti westerns, you know Django, Sartana, the man with no name, this guy and the other guy, and then it's like Django meets Sartana in the pit of whatever, you know what I mean? So yeah, it was crazy, but it was just they just AIP and whatever other studios it was product
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
1 week
Product
only, you
to,
know?
yeah, product to, well, it's like now, people need content.
Yes.
Like, that's why YouTube kind of stinks now because and podcasts too, they need content. So they come up with the stupidest things.
Oh yeah.
And
Except our show, of course.
no, our show's great.
It is. It really is.
We're
I
bringing
give our
movies
show a stamp
back.
of approval. Yeah, yeah, but yeah, I mean, you got YouTube with all the movies, you got Pluto, you got Tubi, you got all those other guys showing with all sorts of obscure, weird movies.
There are tons of things. Find a niche like science fiction,
Oh
horror,
yeah, oh
film
yeah,
noir. There's a ton of streaming apps that have all this copyright free
yeah.
or like what do they call it? Public domain movies and stuff.
Oh yeah, and I forget, and then we forgot back in the '60s and the '50s, AIP started importing all the Godzilla movies.
Yeah,
Godzilla,
yeah,
all. I mean, and then a movie that just had its well in Denmark and it was released in '61 recently, Reptilicus,
yeah.
which was a movie that was not only was it chopped up for American, but it was also they added like some some slime that comes out of the monster's mouth that wasn't even in the Danish
Wow.
movie. Yeah, they probably said, "Hey, we got to do something else." So they hired a guy to do a slime effect coming out of the and that was a puppet.
Yeah.
Remember what was that one from the '50s? This is an American with a giant claw.
Oh
That
God.
puppet.
That I
That
remember
scared
watching
me as
that.
a kid, by the way. That did scare
Did
me
it
as when I was
really?
a little kid.
It's creepy and weird looking, but it definitely is a goofy puppet. But I can remember watching it with my dad. It was the first time he saw it, and we are watching it and like, oh, this is interesting, this thing flying by. And then they show the bird, and you're like, that's it. it
Yeah.
just kind of lost all the
Yeah,
energy,
yeah.
tension built up.
I don't think I read that the actors didn't know what the bird was going to look like until they went to the premiere and they were all like, "Oh my god." Anyway, this movie we watched today, Revenge of Dr. X, Body of the Prey. They wanted this to be like kind of like a Japanese horror monster sci-fi movie or
Yeah,
whatever, but I guess it didn't quite make the I'm guessing they didn't get it. I'm guessing they didn't get an American distribution for this, so
because I don't
or
remember.
even on television.
I don't remember here, but I remember there was a movie, Doctor. I think it's Doctor X.
There
The
was a movie
blind
called Doctor X, an old
Final
30s
Atwill,
movie.
or and where he shrinks. He's in the Amazon and he shrinks
No,
people.
that's Doctor Cyclops.
Like the Cyclops. And then
Doctor X is the one where he puts like synthetic flesh on his face and he creates himself to look different. He kills people or something like that. Doctor X was Lionel Atwill in the. I think that's the plot of it. That was in the 30s
right.
or whatever. Doctor Cyclops was the one where he shrank
That's right.
people.
That's right. Yeah.
So, but this one is in the long line of Japanese monsters. Kind of late in the game, but they were still making Godzilla movies. They never stopped actually, but the original series, they were still making them through the '70s. So, and this does have a title of this does say it was released in 1970. Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah. Who knows?
I mean, if I keep reading, maybe I'll find more information. But this is a mysterious movie, which I don't know. My friend, I asked my friend, I go, what movie do you think we should do? He said this movie. I go, I never watched it before. And I mean, yeah, it's a dumb movie, but it has it's odd. Let's if for those who like odd and those who can withstand an hour and a half of slow paced weirdness, hey,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
crappy print on YouTube though, very
Oh my God.
digitized.
It's definitely a television.
Yeah, it's a
Uh,
16 print. There's no doubt. I had the VHS somewhere, but I'm not set up to watch VHS right now. But I do have the Regal Video VHS of Revenge of Dr. X, because that thing back in the video days, it was everywhere. It was one of the bigger. It was everywhere. I actually bought it back when video stores weren't going out of business. I got it for $5 or something because it was a common. It was a very common title. I guess that name kind of like made people like, hey, that sounds like a good movie or whatever. Did you go to video stores in the early '80s? Did you rent movies or no?
I rented movies, but at the time I was married, so I couldn't always rent what I wanted. It was more. My first wife really liked rom-com, so
Oh, you
I
got to
went,
watch some of those. Going great. Yeah. Okay.
so I got most of my horror stuff from like the movie shows, like what's her name, Elvira, and
Oh yeah, that's right.
Up
Elvira
All,
show. Yeah,
Up
yeah, yeah.
All
On Saturday
Night,
nights or whatever.
yeah,
Yeah.
Up All Night, and uh,
I
incredibly
see it.
strange movies and stuff like that.
Yeah, and what was it? TNT. 100% Weird. They used to show a
Yes,
lot of
yeah,
on the weekends. I mean,
yeah,
if you, I have an old TV guide somewhere that I saved. If you from early '90s, if you look at the weekends, it's like TNT was constantly playing three monster movies all night, and
right.
then Friday and Saturday, and then maybe the local channel might show something, or cable. Yeah, cable too. Cable was around and then, and
Yeah, so I watched a lot of that stuff
yeah.
rather
So,
than funny movies. But yeah, interesting movie.
but anyway, so now you've seen the Revenge of Dr. X, so
Doctor X.
now your
Now
life is
I'd
complete.
really like to hunt down the original script if it's around.
I've never seen it. I just saw it listed in a book as a script. It
Yeah,
would be nice, but then again, do you
yeah.
really want to read this thing?
Well, in a
it,
way,
it will be it would be interesting to see what was in and what was out of the
right,
movie.
what was in and what was out and how it was different, and
Yeah.
not that it would be better,
No. No.
but
It would probably be different, not better, I don't think.
yeah, it would be interesting.
There are oh, somebody published them, and I think I may have a PDF somewhere. There are PDFs of some Wood scripts,
Hmm.
that he did, and of course he wrote like novels, like sleazy novels.
Right.
Story about Ed Wood was that he was supposedly one of the fastest typists. So he
Really?
could just, yeah, he was like,
Wow.
a million words a minute. So he could just sit there, stream of conscious, and write a book in like 3 or 4 days, like a sleazy book. I'm sure he would be sitting there and like not even having just whatever came into his goofy head or whatever. So
Well,
he could knock him out.
that that explains some of their offbeat charm because it's stream of consciousness. So he's not sitting worrying about plot holes or
No,
character
I mean this is
development.
my opinion. I mean I don't know for sure, but I'm imagining that that's why these movies are so bizarre, because they said, "Hey Ed, we need a script," and he'd be sitting there on the typewriter, 100 words a minute, just cranking them out, and novels too, like sleazy novels.
Wow.
It would be nice. I mean, I've seen some of his paperback. Well, there's that. Oh, and I wouldn't even watch this movie. There's that one movie he did called Orgy of the Dead, which is like this movie makes it boring to look at strippers. Okay, this is just one endless strip show after another, and it's just boring. It does have Criswell is funny, and it does have a werewolf and and a mummy and a vampire girl, but this movie is so boring that it's like, oh man. But anyway, there is a novelization of it. I believe he wrote it, so there is that.
Cool.
But and then there are sex novels that are credited to him, because I guess some people like recognize tropes, even
Mm.
though he's not listed as the author, but some people recognize certain ideas or things that, and they connected it with him, or I don't know, maybe they found some paperwork that showed it. But yeah, he was a busy guy, except
Wow.
he was broke and poor, and he also did like sleazy movies too. I mean, like I don't know if he did hardcore, but I know he did some,
Yeah,
either wrote or
soft
directed some like
or yeah,
softcore.
yeah.
Did he do hardcore? I think
I
it
don't
was
know if he
softcore.
did. Well, yeah, I don't know if he did hardcore, but I remember watching something about him, and yeah, he definitely did some
There
soft
is
core.
there is a movie, and I don't know what it was called, and you can see him in it. He's got like longish hair, where he does like a scene where some girls grab him in his underwear and they jump in the bed with him. It's very, ugh. But there is that. If you want to go out and look for it, I don't remember what it was called, but there are there are examples of that, crap or whatever. But yeah, he did what he needed to do to survive. He rode and he had some friends and he could crank them out. So there you go. That's one of the things. If you can crank out, I don't know about now anymore, but back then it was like people got away with a lot of stuff. So anyway, that's it for today. That's our movie. Bird. I was almost called it Bird of the Prey, Body of the Prey,
Body of the Prey, aka Venus Flytrap,
A-
aka Revenge of Dr. X.
aka the Venus Flytrap man.
Yeah,
Hey, I would like them to find a better copy of it than the
I
one
would
we
too.
watched.
I started to watch after I watched the bad copy. I started to flip onto another one. It was shorter, but it had different opening credits. So it looked like somebody may have taken uh,
Yeah,
a copy. The film itself was still crappy, but the credits were done in a higher resolution, and
I
it
tried to.
showed
Yeah,
trapped in a grasshopper being eaten by a Venus flytrap and stuff. I don't know if they had accurate credits at the end because they didn't bother to go.
well, there was one of them I saw. Let me see if I can find another print. I found another print, but this print that they had, up to a certain point, all of a sudden it reverted back to the beginning of the movie, and I was like, wait a minute, and I had to go back to the one that I originally watched, and that one was in sequence, but somebody like it was weird, and it wasn't that much better of a print of it. So,
Yeah, yeah,
all right, well that's it. That's our
that's our
movie.
movie. Yep.
Check it out. You're gonna love it.
It does have a weirdness to it
Yes, it does.
that, and it's not necessarily boring. It's just odd.
Not really.
There are some parts that like overlong scenes of like driving up to the plane or driving here or like being underwater. They could have cut a little shorter,
Yeah.
but for the most part, it was pretty interesting.
Let's just say it was leisurely paced. How about that?
Yes.
That's another criticism of European movies. That some of them are very leisurely paced. Like instead of cutting from like getting into the car and then arriving at the next place, they just show you some getting in the car and the long drive. It's like we don't need to see that long drive. You can cut it down to like under a minute, and we get it. You're there. But
Yeah, we get it.
hey,
Yeah,
editing is an art form too that sometimes
yeah,
isn't done very good
yeah,
in
exactly.
these B movies or whatever. So anyway, we'll be back in a couple of weeks with some other
Something.
classic cinematic masterpiece. But in the meantime, Roddy, what should we be doing?
In the meantime, you should watch more B movies.
All right, stop recording.